Hi everyone, welcome back to Travel with Tom, and today we're making these guys, empanadas or empanadillas or empanaditos, little empanadas. And the first time we come across empanadas is actually by Rabbi Joseph Caro, who writes the preeminent work of Jewish law called the Shulchan Aruch. And he talks about reheating empanadas on Shabbat. The large amount of conversos who actually settle in South America, in places like Mexico, Brazil, and other countries in South America, bring empanadas with them. And one of the throwbacks to these actually being very much a Jewish dish is that most empanadas, when they're filled with meat, are filled with beef rather than pork. So empanadas, this ancient Jewish dish of a pastry with a meat or vegetable or even a fruit filling, makes its way to Latin America thanks to the Jews. Not many people in Latin America know about the Jewish origins of the empanada, but follow along as we make a very basic but very delicious meat-filled empanada. Let's start with the empanadas filling. Today we're making a beef filling for the empanadas, which is my favorite. And what I have in my pan, I'll show you, is an onion frying, one onion. Or if you're like me, and this was the size of your onion, only about a quarter of it, because who knew onions came this big? So the onion is frying, and to that we're gonna add 2 cloves of garlic, which I minced, and I'm gonna season my onions. And that way, when I add the beef, everything is going to be really well seasoned. So just to remind you, I fried my onion in 2 tablespoons of olive oil. I've added the garlic after the onion is already softened. To that, I'm going to add a teaspoon of cumin, a teaspoon of oregano. I don't know how to pronounce it anymore. I've been in England too long. Oregano, I don't know. But a teaspoon of whatever you call it going in, along with a teaspoon of salt and a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper. As I've said often, I'm super sensitive to pepper. So I go in for a 1/4 at most, but if you're not crazy sensitive like me, add more by all means. You know, add as much pepper as you're comfortable with. So all of that is going in, and to that I'm adding my ground beef. What I have here is 380 grams. I'm going for somewhere between 350 and 400. So a smaller packet is what you're after here. And that is going in like just under a pound, I guess, of ground beef. So we're going to cook that. And while I cook that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Jews and empanadas. So empanadas, which is wrapped dough. No, it's a filling. It's like a handheld pie. That's how we describe it. Filled with a savory filling. Starts out life in Spain. And the Jews take it to it really fast. I'm gonna add only one more ingredient, which is beef broth. But if I was making an authentic empanada, I would not stop here. There would be olives, hard-boiled eggs, boiled potato, and currants, like little tiny raisins, all added into this. But I wanted to make a recipe that was friendly for my children, who wouldn't touch an empanada if it had the addition of egg, potato, olives, and currants. So the Tom recipe is something much more basic, but child-friendly, and we've made this, I think, 4 or 5 times leading up to the perfect recipe that I'm sharing with you. and every single one has been devoured, which is awesome and warms my heart because obviously paring it down was what my kids wanted. But look up other recipes if you want to do something more interesting and add more flavors. So all my beef has been browned. To that, I'm adding 1 cup of beef broth. If you can't get, I made it from like those little stock cubes. If you can't get that, use chicken. It'll taste just as delicious. So that's going in, and I'm going to boil it down until most of the liquid has evaporated because we want a pretty dry-ish mixture. Still having a little bit of liquid there, but mainly dry. So we're gonna let this boil up. So our empanada filling is done. I'm letting it cool off a bit while I make the empanada dough, which is perhaps the most important part of the empanada. Without the dough, it's not an empanada. So what I have here is 125 ml of warm water, and I'm adding to that 125 ml of olive oil. I know it's an unusual way to make dough, but we're looking for a dough that isn't dairy or meaty. It still holds together, and I think if we're thinking about the way it would have authentically been made by Spanish Jews, this is probably the way. So we've got an oil-water combination, and here I have 375 grams of flour. I'm gonna start by adding about half of it to my oil and water mixture. Ooh, before I forget, almost forgot, half a teaspoon salt goes in there too. Not too late. And I'm gonna just mix it all in. And I'm gonna keep on adding the flour until I have a really easy dough to work with. And you'll see, we're gonna work with it straight away. There's no waiting with this dough. So what I have here is the beginning of a pastry. I'm gonna add the rest of my flour in there and mix it all in. And it should come together as a really easy to work with dough. And empanada dough is actually really, really easy to work with. There are a lot of pastry doughs, and I think people get scared of pastry because they're concerned about working with it and how difficult it is. Well, this is olive oil, water, and flour, and there's close to no difficulty working with it. So it's come together already. I'm just gonna try to knead in as much of the flour from the bowl as possible into here. And it's okay if some of the flour doesn't make it into my dough. It will absorb as much as it can at this point. So here we go, almost done. It's very exciting. I really love pastry and pastry filled with meat. Oh my goodness. And it's just delicious and really easy to make. It's a little bit of a project, which I think is what I'm after nowadays. So it's a project which is easy to make. All right, my dough is together down on my surface, and because I find it easier to work with smaller pieces, I'm gonna divide my dough into quarters. So quarters done, 1, 2, 3, 4. And with this portion, and because the dough is so oily, I don't need to flour anything. I'm gonna roll out my dough ready for the filling. So now here's your choice. You can make empanadillas, I'm not even sure. A mini version of empanadas, or you can make a regular size. So I'm going for a regular size. I've got my bowl ready. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use the bowl as an outline for my empanadas. The truth is you can make minis, which is what we've been making loads of here, and the kids love them. But I'm going for a slightly bigger, more authentic version that really should be like part of a main meal and not just a snack. But the amount we'll be needing around here, it may be a snack. Okay, so my dough is rolled out. Did you see how easy that was? And now here is my bowl. I'm going to use a sharp knife to cut around the bowl. Yes. And none of this dough goes to waste. Roll it and re-roll it as many times as you need to. Here I have an egg yolk, and I'm going to use it as the paint or the glue for my empanadas. So I'm going around the entire perimeter of my dough. I'm going to use a majorly full tablespoonful of my filling, maybe even a second one because I made these fairly huge. I'm very excited about it. Even a third. Whoa, this is a good empanada, people. It really depends on the size of your shell. So now we're gonna flip it over and glue it shut. And repeat with the rest of our filling and dough. I'm pretty excited about this. So you can either crimp the edges or you can use a fork to kind of glue them down. So that's what we're gonna do. This guy is going straight on my baking tray, ready to bake. I'm gonna repeat with the rest of it. So our empanadas are filled, they're sealed together. They're gonna go onto my baking tray to bake for about half an hour until they're golden and delicious. They are this amazing snack food. I hope you try them out and see you all soon.